Hi, this is Arthur, and this is a summary and explanation of the story of the world quests Canticles of Harmony and For Yesterday and Tomorrow. Both quests were released in the game Genshin Impact version 4.6. The Traveler and Paimon head to the town of Petrichor. Once there, they find a bunch of adventurers acting strangely. The leader of these adventurers tells the Traveler a story about a time when the golem armies of the Dark Lord Remus destroyed countless towns and cities. Remus conquered lands, polluted waters, and used music to enslave others. Fontanians rejected Remus's rule and warred against him. Side note, Remus has been mentioned many times in the quests of Fontaine. He is otherwise known as the God King of Remuria, an ancient fallen civilization. Remuria was known to be a music-based society. They talk with the adventurers for a bit before getting into a fight and chasing them away. The Traveler then looks at a nearby statue and is transported into the perspective of someone called the Imperator. Side note, Imperator is a word taken from ancient Roman and means king or emperor. Many names in this quest are taken from ancient Roman or ancient Greek names. In this vision, the Imperator is about to sound a great symphony called Phobos. Unfortunately, Phobos has not changed the prophesized destruction of his civilization. This Imperator has somehow given his people bodies of stone, but they still cannot escape their fate. Side note, the word Fortuna is also used here and is used a lot in Fontaine. Fortuna has multiple meanings, but in this case is used to describe their inescapable future destruction. The Imperator is later revealed to be Remus. Side note, following the Roman theme, Remus is a mythological character involved with the founding of Rome. Phobos was meant to bring justice and happiness, but instead became the source of all their sin. Remus then prepares to play Phobos, and it seems his civilization is about to end. The Traveler then wakes from her vision and heads to town. Once there, they meet another person acting strangely. This person refers to the Dark Lord Remus as the Sebastus Remus and seems to revere him. Side note, Sebastus is an ancient Greek honorific for the ruler or emperor. This person soon collapses and they help him to a bench before continuing on. They then meet someone named Este. Este says the whole town seems to have fallen under some kind of spell and suspects the problem is coming from some nearby ruins. Este is unsure why he and the Traveler are unaffected. The Traveler and Paimon decide to head over to the ruins and see a cat. The cat runs off towards the ruins. They follow it and are attacked by some statues. After defeating them, the cat shows up and talks to them. The cat says he is Orenides of Orenopolis, a spirit keeper of the ancient realm. Paimon decides to call him Osse. Osse says the boundaries between past and present are blurring due to the influence of a chaotic symphony. Side note, this chaotic symphony likely refers to Phobos, and I will call it Phobos going forward. Phobos is what awoke Osse. Phobos stole the souls of Petrichor's townspeople and filled their bodies with identities and memories from the past. While the area affected is still small, it will eventually reach the rest of Fontaine. The Traveler agrees to help Osse stop Phobos. The Traveler then retrieves a harp and helps Osse unseal an underwater entrance. They head down and eventually reach a place called the Fated Castle. Osse explains the Fated Castle is just the beginning of an entire sunken nation. Osse's mission is to prevent this nation from resurfacing. They continue on and find a music box. Osse explains this box can freely operate the power of Phobos. Osse mentions that if they find Phobos, they can return the souls of the townspeople. They continue on and notice a large shiny fish swimming outside. They eventually reach a giant mural and someone steps out of it. This person says he is Boethius of Remuria, foremost Harmost of Phobos, and calls Osse Cassiodor. Side note, a Harmost is a Spartan title for a high-ranking military governor. Osse tells Boethius to return the souls he has taken, but Boethius refuses. Boethius says that over the last few thousand years he has bound his soul to Phobos, and both Phobos and Remuria will return. Osse says they should have assimilated into Fontaine thousands of years ago, but it was Boethius who warped Remuria into puppets of hate. Boethius says that Osse is the sole survivor of Remuria and wants Osse to join him. Boethius then says he will wait for him in the royal city Domus Aurea and leaves. After fighting off some statues, Osse agrees to answer the Traveler's questions. First, they ask about Remuria. Long ago, before the founding of the court of Fontaine, Remus founded the nation of Remuria in what is now Fontaine. The ancestors of present-day Fontanians called him the Dark Lord Remus. Remuria later sank, and the ruins they are currently in are actually those of Remuria. The people of Remuria were a new race with bodies of stone and ichor for blood. Remus gave the people these bodies in hope they would escape the mortality of flesh and the shackles of Fortuna. All the moving statues they fought until now were actually Remurians. Osse adds that those Remurians are all mindless slaves now and that he has free will thanks to Remus. Despite Remus's efforts, Remuria's people still could not escape Fortuna. This is why Remus created Phobos, music that could weave destiny in hopes of avoiding their prophesied destruction. Unfortunately, creating Phobos didn't save them but destroyed Remuria and sank it beneath the waves. They then ask about Boethius and why he called Osse Cassiodor. Osse explains he has had many names and bodies over the years. This is thanks to Remus separating Osse's soul from Phobos. Boethius was once a Harmos of Remuria and a survivor of the catastrophe that befell Remuria. The original purpose of Phobos was to unify surviving Remurians and prevent cataclysmic floods from happening again. However, Boethius had other ideas. While Osse and his companions traveled around Fontaine trying to contain the power of the primordial waters, Boethius convinced the survivors of Remuria to follow his plan. Side note, the primordial waters likely refer to the primordial sea, a prominent body of water in many of Fontaine's quests. Generally, the primordial sea grants many abilities, but is also featured in many prophecies as a destroyer of civilizations. The surviving Remurians initiated a ritual that aimed to restore Phobos, which was somehow shattered at the time. Boethius then used Phobos to dissolve the will of the remaining Remurians and stole the souls of many Fontainians. Following that, Boethius took control of many rulers and destruction spread across Fontaine. To stop Boethius, Osse joined with the surviving Fontainians and fought against Boethius and his forces. They eventually sealed Boethius and the ruins of Remuria. Osse says he followed Remus's ideals of equality, justice, and freedom. Boethius's actions violated those ideals. Osse has since sworn to be a barrier between the past and the present. Despite many years, Boethius has somehow weaved his soul into Phobos and gained mastery over it. Now it seems Boethius wants to continue where he left off thousands of years ago. They then ask about Phobos. Osse explains Phobos is human memory and persona woven into a melody, creating a song where human souls can dwell and have their wishes fulfilled. Mastering Phobos is to master fate. This is the secret imparted by the great golden bee, Sybillia, the prophet who survived the previous cycle. Side note, Sybillia is a prominent figure in Remuria's history, and the previous cycle likely refers to the cataclysmic floods that occurred before Remuria's founding. Remus created Phobos in hopes it would allow Remurians to control their destiny. Unfortunately, Remus overestimated the Remurians. At the people's request, Remus wrote all melodies into the grandest of melodies called Phobos. Side note, this likely refers to how Phobos can control the wills of all Remurians, and that the people of Remuria asked Remus and the other high-ranking Remurians to make Phobos do this. Phobos was supposed to bring them the greatest happiness, but something went wrong. Osse suspects only a Harmos could have changed Phobos' melody and suspects Boethius did something. They then ask about the visions the travelers saw earlier. Osse says those were memories of Remus, though Osse isn't sure how the traveler obtained them. Osse says it is clear Phobos cannot control the traveler, and he has some ideas why Este is also unaffected. Osse also wonders why Remus disappeared along with Remuria, as the water should not be able to hurt a god. They decide to head to Domus Aurea and stop Boethius. Paimon also decides to start calling Osse Monsieur Oz. They continue on and see the glowing fish they saw earlier tied up. Monsieur Oz explains that fish is Sila, a fell dragon who once served Remus. Monsieur Oz also clarifies that Sila isn't really a dragon, just a slightly stronger Vishap. Monsieur Oz goes on to say Sila was once Remus's friend, but revolted during a critical conflict between Remurians and Fontainians. Sila led the brutal Dragonborn to Makimos, which was an outer city of Remuria's capital city, Capitolium. Side note, the Dragonborn are Vishaps. To enter the inner city, Sila had to pass through a place called the Inidium Iani due to a barrier that separated the inner and outer city. When Sila entered the Inidium Iani, Boethius and his legion shut the Inidium Iani and sealed Sila inside. Sila's been sealed ever since. They look around and see the gates of Domus Aurea are closed, probably by Boethius as he was leaving. They come up with a plan to free Sila in hopes he will break down the gates for them. They go around interacting with Remurians and release the chains binding Sila. Along the way, Monsieur Oz mentions the reason why Este is lucid is likely because he is a descendant of a Remurian. Este's ancestor must have been one of the Remurians who followed Monsieur Oz long ago and integrated with the Fontainians. The traveler eventually undo all of Sila's chains and sees another of Remus's memories. In this memory, we see Remus suspecting something is wrong with Phobos. It is clear everyone in Remuria relies on Phobos to make decisions for them. Remus decides to grant one Remurian free will as a contingency against something going wrong with Phobos. This Remurian is Monsieur Osse. Monsieur Osse leaves and we see the Remurians question Remus for stopping their war with the Fontanians. It seems most Remurians are prejudiced against Fontanians and want to slaughter and conquer them. The traveler then wakes up. They talk to Sila. Sila is grateful to be freed and recognizes Monsieur Osse. Sila reveals that him leading an army of Vishaps to attack the capital was part of Remus's secret plan. Monsieur Osse does not believe Sila until Sila shows him some golden bees that seem to mean Remus gave Sila some of his power. Side note, golden bees are the sign of Sybilla, historically known to be a close ally of Remus. Sila says the plan was for him to reach Domus Aurea, but he failed. Remuria then sank, trapping both him and his Vishaps. Sila says the true traitor is Boethius. Boethius told Sila he would allow Sila entry into Domus Aurea. However, the moment Sila arrived, Boethius and his army attacked. Sila suspects Boethius somehow learned of Remus's plan. Sila then blasts open the doors and takes the group down into Domus Aurea. They reach Domus Aurea and it looks like a giant harp. Monsieur Osse explains it was made from a giant ship and the whole structure is an instrument capable of blasting music to the entire world. Side note, there are historical tales of Remus using the great ship Fortuna to unite the people and create the nation of Remuria. This is likely the same ship. Monsieur Osse goes on to say Remus's will somehow continues to protect this place. Boethius likely survived the passage of time by hiding here and used that time to master Phobos. Sila then says goodbye and sends them on their way as his body is made of ichor and would be useless in battle. They head to Domus Aurea and meet Boethius again. More about Remuria is revealed. In the past, the Mistress of Waters once offered Remurians the opportunity to integrate with the people of Fontaine. Side note, the Mistress of Waters refers to Egeria, the previous Hydro Archon. Unfortunately, the people of Remuria chose war instead. Accordingly, Remus cooperated with the Fontanians and the Vishaps to destroy Remuria and Phobos. Boethius then betrayed Remus, trapped Sila in the Nidium Iani, and tried to take control of Phobos, which controlled all Remurians. Phobos then seemingly went out of control and sunk all of Remuria. Boethius then spent the last few thousand years trying to fix Phobos, which is what recently stole the souls of Petrichor's townspeople. Boethius now seeks to become a god, use Phobos to control fate, bring back Remuria, and conquer the surface world. Boethius invites Monsieur Osse to join him, but Monsieur Osse declines. Boethius then tries to forcibly return Monsieur Osse to Phobos, but the traveler gets sucked in too. The traveler is transported somewhere and meets Boethius again. Boethius explains this is a place under his control. Boethius recognizes the traveler is not from this world and asks the traveler why she is even involved. Boethius says he and Monsieur Osse are the only remaining Remurians with free will and need to be merged together. Boethius adds that even if the traveler destroys his body, he will survive as he has become one with Phobos. Boethius then leaves and sends some enemies to keep the traveler occupied. Just then, Monsieur Osse shows up and defeats the enemies. Monsieur Osse is in his Remurian form and goes by Cassiodor. Cassiodor explains this place was created by Boethius and is a manifestation of his soul maintained by Phobos. Boethius has not obtained Phobos' full power. If he does, Boethius could alter reality and revert the entirety of Fontaine to the way it was thousands of years ago. Controlling fate, though, seems unlikely, as even Remus failed to do so in the past. Cassiodor says Boethius has prepared a mighty new form for himself in the real world and will initiate a ritual to take that form. Part of that ritual seems to require gathering parts of Phobos scattered throughout the sea into his new form. When Boethius does so, there will be an opportunity to destroy him and his new body. Cassiodor says only the traveler can destroy Boethius as she is not from this world and is free from this world's destiny and Phobos. Cassiodor then sends the traveler back to the real world where she sees Paimon and Sila. The traveler tells them what happened inside and they seem blocked from entering Domus Aurea. Sila says he is unable to help them in his currently weakened form. However, Sila explains the will of Phobos once flowed through the golden aqueducts to every corner of Remuria. If the traveler can rebuild the aqueduct in this area and restore the flow, that should grant access to Domus Aurea. They then go around the area collecting fragments of Phobos and rebuild the golden aqueduct, regaining access to Domus Aurea. The traveler then experiences another memory of Sila talking to Remus. In the memory, Sila is shocked by the atrocities committed by Remuria. Sila brings up a promise Remus made to the usurper of many waters that he would use the pure water she gave him to create a world of endless prosperity. Side note, the usurper of many waters likely refers to the mistress of many waters, who was Egeria, the previous Hydro Archon. The pure water Egeria gave him likely refers to water from the primordial sea. Just as Sila is about to return to the usurper of many waters, Remus proposes a plan. This plan requires Sila to lead his Vishaps and attack Remuria. Once Sila has reached Remuria's interior, he would play Remus's last symphony. This would destroy Phobos and cause Remus's death. The traveler then awakens and says they must play the symphony given to Sila in order to destroy Phobos. Sila mentions that Remus's power somehow remains in the seas. With Sila here, the conditions are met to play Remus's last symphony. Sila further explains that Remus's last symphony is called Requiem and is in order for Phobos to self-destruct. Destroying Phobos would have given Remurians back their free will and turned them back into flesh and blood. Ideally, this would make them limit their prejudice against the other races, as they would be flesh and blood again like everybody else. Unfortunately, Boethius' betrayal changed everything. Side note, it isn't entirely clear what happened at the end of Remuria. What we can conclude is that Remus did his part, shattered Phobos, which then led to the sinking of Remuria and Remus's death. It is unclear if Remuria would have sank if Sila were present, but it is clear the Remurians would have returned to being flesh and blood mortals. If they defeat Boethius, they can release the souls of the Remurians currently trapped in their stone bodies. The traveler then releases the flow of Ichor into the golden aqueducts and enters Domus Aurea. They enter and find Cassiodor has joined Boethius. They then battle Boethius' new body when Boethius seems to lose control. Turns out Cassiodor only merged wills with Boethius in order to wrestle control from him. Cassiodor was also a Harmos and can also control Phobos like Boethius. Cassiodor also retains his free will as it was severed by Remus. Cassiodor then reminds Boethius that all Remurians were once normal Fontanians. Remurians forsook their flesh bodies for stone and believed themselves superior to mortals of flesh and blood. The traveler then battles Boethius again, and just when it seems Boethius is beaten, a floating harp appears and starts talking to them. Turns out Phobos is actually sentient. Phobos explains that it used to be Sybilla, a survivor of the last deluge that swallowed the earth. Sybilla wished to grant happiness to all humans but lacked the power. Sybilla then seemingly sacrificed herself and combined with Remus's power turned herself into Phobos. Phobos is the aggregate of all their wishes, so when the Remurians wished for war, Phobos granted it. Turns out Remus learned what Phobos was doing. When Phobos learned of Remus's plan, Phobos consumed Boethius and betrayed Remus. Phobos has been masquerading around as Boethius ever since and is responsible for sealing Sila. Phobos then asks Cassiodor what his wish is, and he says it is to die along with Phobos and end this nightmare. Cassiodor tells the traveler to destroy them both. The traveler does so. As Cassiodor fades, they say their goodbyes, and Cassiodor asks them to play Requiem and release the souls of Remuria. They head outside with the no longer possessed cat, who Paimon now calls Osse. There they talk to Sila and perform Requiem. Along with the released souls, the traveler heads back to Petrichor with Sila and Osse. Once there, Sila says goodbye and that he should meet with the new true dragon born to us. Side note, he is likely referring to Nouvelette. Sila leaves and they go meet with Este and check on the town. The townspeople seem back to normal and so does Este. However, Este doesn't remember them as it seems he was dreaming at the time despite appearing lucid. Este then agrees to take care of Osse and they leave it to him. And that is the end of this quest in this video. If you've liked what you've seen here, please like, comment, and subscribe.